Sup flappers, in this video I will show you Ganyu's potential as a main DPS for free-to-play. Forget Refinement 5 ammo spell showcases, forget about all plus 20 god tier artifacts. While you're at it, kiss all the constellations goodbye as well, because in this video we are showing her at Constellation 0 with a level 90 bow and plus 16 artifacts. How well does Ganyu function for free-to-play players? Now keep in mind, even in this showcase I am using a bow that most free-to-play players would not have, let alone getting a bow to level 90 just to run her as the main DPS. So I hope this video can show you her potential, because I really did go all out. Through testing Ganyu main DPS with this setup, it quickly became apparent that the best way to play her is spamming her charge attack. It may have seemed obvious, but I tried to use her as a mixed auto attacker and charged hybrid. It just did not work. If you're trying to play Ganyu main DPS with anything except her Frost Flake arrow and bloom damage, forget it. Now with this setup, I was able to get amazing results in certain aspects of the game and lackluster ones in other areas. Through testing Ganyu, it's safe to say she will require a steep investment to make work. Now remember, anyone can be a main carry. I'm not saying she cannot be. In fact, if you pour the resources into her, she ends up being one of the most broken main DPS available. But this is a free-to-play guide, and I will stay true to the audience and give my honest opinion regarding her free-to-play main DPS potential. I think Constellation 0 Ganyu falls the hardest when it comes to bossing, especially bosses such as Child, where they can gap close you in the blink of an eye, so keeping your distance oftentimes won't mean as much. Bosses also are not affected by your taunt, and with Ganyu being extremely squishy, you will often find yourself on the receiving end of some very lethal damage if you're not careful. However, mobbing with this character is one of the most addicting ways to play the game. Certain domains and lores in the Abyss become more manageable with Ganyu. However, do remember that there are also other domains that punishes her greatly. So we will go over all of that in this video as well. But first, let's look at her artifacts. In order to get the most out of Ganyu, I tried her with Wandere's Troupe, Blizzard Strayer, and Retracing Bolide. Now, out of the three, Wandere's Troupe was definitely easier to use but harder to farm. Blizzard Strayer was consistent and alleviated the need for OP artifact stats, however, heavily relied on cryo application and is only at peak performance against frozen enemies, which means you will never be able to get the full 4-piece effect against bosses. Retracing Bolide was the most consistent but required the most babysitting, meaning I need other characters to make her work. Granted, if you can get a good Bolide set on her with Geo characters to boot, it's very comfortable to play, since this also solves her problem of being squishy. Now, all three of these artifact sets has their pros and cons, and please choose them according to the team you are building and resources you have. Main stats for the artifacts are all attack percentage sands, crowd damage cup, and crit damage headpiece. Do remember that I had a level 90 Skyward's Harp, so for you, likely you'd want to go for critical rate headpiece, since you want to push that critical rate to 50%. Although this is why the Blizzard Strayer will be such a good set for most, since it alleviates the need for critical rate artifacts and allows you to build crit damage. So do take all this into consideration when building Ganyu. Substats you should be looking for are critical damage, then attack percentage, critical rate, elemental mastery. Now, if you are running a Shattering freeze comp, you can rid the need for critical rate and go for energy recharge. You do not need a lot of energy recharge, just enough to have her burst skill on cooldown. Now, for weapons, since this is a main DPS guide, I will focus on her main DPS weapons. 3-star choices, we have the Slingshot. Now with the Slingshot, as long as you play from a medium range, you will get the effect as shown in the clip. However, the damage bonus does not apply to the spread damage. For those who are confident with their shots, you can use the Sharpshooter's Oath, but remember, this is only for the charge shot and not the bloom. So for this reason, 3-star weapons aren't really recommended, as the damage scaling just isn't there. Now, if you are wanting to play Ganyu as a main DPS and you are serious about it, 4-star weapons will be a basic requirement if you want to see any good results. The best 4-star weapon, in my opinion, which is the Viridescent Hunt. Now, you can get this weapon from the BP shop. The weapon has crit rate as the substat and serves the purpose of allowing you to go for a crit damage headpiece. For 5-star weapons, we have the Amos bow. It takes the cake for the best in-slot weapon for main DPS Ganyu. And then of course, the Skyward's Harp. The Amos bow just plays too well with Ganyu's kit, and as you recall, I mentioned that if you want to play her as a main DPS, the only efficient way is to use her second charge attack and bloom damage. To be quite honest, the scaling on Ganyu's normal bow attacks are just very average, and instead, the scaling on the Frost Arrow is just extraordinary. So do use the Amos bow to take advantage of that if you can. Now onwards to team build. I tried out several teams with Ganyu, and these were the ones who worked best. Here are the 3 teams that worked best for me. Starting with the first one, Ganyu Main DPS, XINYAN support DPS, Qiqi or DIONA healer, and XIANGLING elemental support. This team, as you can see, is a Shattering freeze team with melt synergy. I tried many variations of this comp and ultimately settled with this one, as XINYAN's rain swords give Ganyu the much needed protection, and XIANGLING's Guoba works surprisingly well with Ganyu's taunt. Also, DIONA in this case may be better than Qiqi since she adds a second layer of defense to Ganyu and creates more space when dashing backwards to generate her shield. Ultimately, this team is extremely free-to-play friendly, and you can also call it the banner team build. The key is when Ganyu uses her burst, she is forced to stay inside it, and with all the enemies rushing towards you, XIANGLING's burst skill helps out greatly. Artifacts I ran for this team was the Blizzard Strayer set for Ganyu. The second team is one where I try to push it a little with Ganyu's main DPS, Albedo support DPS, Qiqi or DIONA healer, and FISCHL elemental support. The idea was to layer as much damage as I can and cover for Ganyu's biggest weakness, which is damage downtime due to charge shot duration. It worked well, and it's thanks to FISCHL, which allowed me to constantly proc Albedo's elemental skill. Artifacts for this team was the Wanderer's Troupe on Ganyu. Finally, the third team is our Geo team with Ganyu main DPS, Albedo support DPS, Qiqi or DIONA healer, and ZHONGLI elemental support. This team is a no-brainer Geo protect the Ganyu comp by covering Ganyu's other biggest weakness, which is her squishiness. I turned Ganyu into a turret that never budged an inch. This team was very enjoyable as I stopped having to worry so much about dodging attacks, which let me land more weak shot arrows, so this definitely takes some difficulty off highlighting Ganyu. Now keep in mind that Geo Resonance will be getting buffed in patch 1.3 along with ZHONGLI, so this team could be extremely good going forward. Artifacts for this team was Retracing Bolide for Ganyu. So finally, for the pros and cons, while Ganyu has great potential as the main DPS, we have to know her limits as well. Ganyu is exceptional against mobs, the more the merrier, and in fact it greatly increases her DPS when she is fighting more monsters since there is no reduced damage to her bloom damage. The problem is when you fight bosses. A boss such as Child may give free-to-play Ganyu's some trouble as her native squishiness and reliance on charge shots may make it difficult to dodge fast attacks. The reliance on charge attacks also means that in certain domains where superconduct is punished, Ganyu becomes completely irrelevant, such as the Midsummer Courtyard. But with all this said, Ganyu can definitely fit the main DPS role, but do know that to get the most out of it, be ready to pay a hefty amount of resources. And that's it for the video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, join my Discord to engage with others in discussing builds and theory, or just have a good time. I will be making more videos testing Ganyu and her potential, so until the next video, people, flappers, and everyone in between, stay safe and peace.